Welcome back to the gang. Before we get into our next conversation, I guess we each have a little something to read about. Klein says, this drama at EACC is very interesting. It's like Tom chasing Jerry, and then they end up smiling together, forgetting that they were chasing each other.
Bernard Tunga says, Kenya should be closed to restore factory settings unless we have come to a consensus that we erase the country's future kabisa is such the very sustainable. And then Frederick Okango, if the DCI were to pick the Auditor General report, all 47 governors would be in jail today.
Okay.
All right.
The Auditor General's report is a masterpiece of evidence.
All right. Mahad Abdi says, I think you're all unfair by saying the county money is being lost in the county. No, I don't think so. The money doesn't even get to the counties. It's being stolen in Nairobi and spent in Nairobi.
Okay.
Omar Patrick says, sometimes we blame the politicians, but the problem starts with us. We know someone's background very well, and we still go to the ballot boxes and we vote for them. When they continue with their looting spree, we're the first ones to cry.
And Donald Kipkorir, lawyer, says anticipatory bail is an innovative right, not in our constitution, but can only be given by the High Court. The alleged anticipatory bail given by the magistrate in Kiambu to Waititu should be torn up and magistrate dismissed. Only High Court has the exclusive jurisdiction.
And I think he's basing it on the bail and bond policy guidelines of March 2015, which say that the High Court may grant anticipatory bail, that is bail pending arrest, not is the High Court, provided the applicant demonstrate that his or her right to liberty is likely to be compromised or breached unlawfully by an organ of the state that is supposed to protect this right. Further, the applicant must demonstrate that the apprehension of arrest is real and not imagined or speculative.
Those are Mutunga guidelines.
There you go.
Yeah.
All right, so keep your views coming in. The hashtag is NewsGang at Citizen TV Kenya, and you can use our personal handles as well. Now, it's all about the ABC of CBC, or is it the 1, 2, 3 of CBC? We can't seem to agree on that. And even in the course of that implementation of the new curriculum, there seems to be no agreement between government and the teachers. Listen to the war of words between the NUT leader, Wilson Sossion, and the CS, Magoha.
We are not going to teach CBC anymore in our classes.
If you have something better, why don't you tell us what it is, or shut up?
We cannot be invited as flower girls to go and cheer a policy that we have not participated in. We will never be flower girls.
We have held over 20 consultative meetings with critical stakeholders, and there are many, and we are continuing.
And we have made it very clear, we will teach using the normal pedagogical method that we were trained. And that's the advice we have given out.
At strategic level, our eyes are engaged on the ball, which is the CBC.
So, the war of words. These ones will teach what they will. Magoha says, put up or shut up. So, there's the war of words, Joe, but, you know, what are the issues in dispute with respect to the new curriculum?
You know, Yvonne, except for the word pedagogical, it's difficult to know that this is about our children.
True. That's right.
Okay. You'd think actually these people are talking about some oranges or some goats or whatever. But really there is so much at stake. And I think that before you even get to what are these people arguing about, I think it's good to step back and think about this. What are we talking about? We are talking about an education system. We are talking about something that is going to determine the kind of people come out of schools, and therefore is going to determine what kind of people get into the job market, and this in a very big way will determine what happens to this country for the next several years. And I think that is what is being lost in this you could call it a wrestling match. I think Jamila called it that once, because we have someone shouting at the top of his voice that they will not teach. You have another one shouting equally loud that they are not going to go back. As a matter of fact, Professor Magoha has said that
the baby is premature.
The baby is here, so you're not going to take the baby back to them
the womb
as you discuss how to deal with it. But I think fundamental to this is this. It is clear that it is the government that must drive the policy or must drive an education curriculum, must sort of give direction, but it's also clear that it is the teachers who are going to teach it. So everybody who's making noise here is indispensable in this conversation. How is it that these people are talking at each other and they're not talking to each other?
Okay.
Because there are things that have been raised about did we need to change this system? The government probably has a good answer, and they've given out several documents to that effect. But do the teachers know that, or they're just ignoring it? But I'm really looking forward to a time when there can be a meeting of minds, if you like, between those two gentlemen to actually put everything on the table and say, what do we do?
And that's right. LK, you understand history. A lot of people saying that what CBC is claiming to do now, or touting to do, is what 844 was. For those of us that went through that system, it was supposed to make us more practical and give us all of these skills that the CBC is talking about. And indeed, what Joe is saying, did we need to spend these billions of shillings? Just
actually, 360 billion.
There you go.
I walked in here, Yvonne, with a huge document, a paper that was presented to the World Bank. It's a World Bank discussion paper presented by Professor George Shiwani on implementing educational policies in Kenya. You read this document and realize nothing new. There's nothing new in this conversation. What has changed is the people that are having the conversation, and quite honestly, the quality of the discourse and the quality of their contribution. This is an education exercise. It's supposed to be very sober. It's not supposed to have the kind of noise that we are seeing. Way back in 1981, when the McKay report proposed the 844 system, the single line said that the structure was to bring about a curriculum that is technically and practically oriented. Meaning there are those people who will tell you that 844 is actually what the country has been waiting for. You're actually discussing a system that will deliver the skills, practical skills that will allow people to offer their skills and get self-employed. That is what 844 is supposed to do. Now, CBC is also talking about being very practical, but obviously it's running into a number of leadership issues. And I just want to mention one thing. I think Professor Magoha is running into the headwinds of political public participation. That's the new requirement in how we do things. You can't just come to the scene and say, here it is, let's go.
But he claims
you can see
22
Sossion
meetings or something.
Yes, but Sossion is playing it up very well and saying, no, we're not just going to be reloaded into a process that we have not been consulted. He is very, very aware of the spirit of public participation. And I think what needed to have happened when Magoha took office was a quiet conversation between him and the stakeholders. Don't do press conferences. Don't do public events before you lock yourselves up in a room and say, hey, people, what do we do about this? It's supposed to be a very sober process, and that sobriety is missing. It's looking like a very political process instead.
Yvonne, the most important person in this whole mix is the child, ni huyo mtoto, because already this curriculum is being implemented from grade 1 to 3. Hawa watoto wako shuleni wanasoma. And you hear from some parents that they love the fact that they're more involved in what their children are doing, because remember what this curriculum is doing is more practical learning as compared to what we used to do at 844, which was just the cramming na unaeka kwa mtihani, kwa exam. But now parents are more involved. Okay, there's a good and bad in that, because according to this curriculum, 60% of the work is to be done by the parents. In that, mtoto anakuja nyumbani, unasema tunachora basi, ama tunaenda nje kuangalia mwezi, ama tunaenda kuhesabu nyota, things like that. So the parent is more involved. And there are challenges in that. There are parents who are unable to do that. There are children who don't have parents. There are some who are being brought up by their grandmothers. There are some who are being brought in different circumstances where children are. So some of these things may be difficult to implement, one. Two, we have instances of how this implementation is happening in private schools vis-a-vis and the public ones. I think, Robert, if you can show us the footage that we have of how things are in grade 3 classes. Those are two different schools. There's one where one grade 3 class had 105
5
students and 1 teacher.
Yeah.
And they didn't even have books. I think there were only 4 books in
There were
that class.
3, and they were actually donated by the parents.
By the
because they've
parents.
been waiting for government to bring in the books.
And they hadn't brought
arrived.
it. And this is on the opposite sides, a class that I think had 15 or 16 students, and there were 3 teachers. It was the same subject. They were being taught about colors. And we're talking about practical learning. So here we have where there are only 3 books, na mwalimu anazungumza kuhusu rangi, but the kids can even hawaoni, hawasiki kwa sababu these are 8-9-year-olds. Kule nyuma wanaongea, wanaendelea na shughuli yao. Ni kidogo hivi. So hawasikii inaendelea. And on the other side, these kids actually had the colors. Walikuwa wanachanganya kabisa kabisa. So that practical we are talking about, ndo hiyo inaendelea hapo. That's one. 2, according to what has been said, and I was reading today, is that with this CBC, students, when they get to grade 4, they'll be learning foreign languages. These foreign languages are supposed to be Arabic, French, Chinese, and German, which is amazing, which is good that they'll get a chance. That's the question. Who will teach them?
Loguna said they have enough
teachers. They're supposed to start learning in grade 4, but maswali yanaibuka kuhusu nani atafundisha hizi. And you see, we have how many months to when these children are supposed to be going to grade 4? It's only 6 months to go.
Yeah.
But what are the plans? Kuna walimu wa kufundisha. Number 2, they'll be having a pool of 12 subjects to learn from. And I want to talk a bit about that. They'll have Kiswahili, English, mathematics, science and technology, social studies, agriculture, home science, religious education, creative arts, physical health education, pastoral programs, instructions, and the languages now. That's what they'll have to pick from. That's, I think, already a bit too much, because I remember one of the good things we had when we were doing 844, and you'll give me a minute, Gashuri, is that we used to have art and craft and music. We used to have science and agriculture. Remember, we used to make those too small to stools. Unaambia unafaa kushona, unafaa kwenda wakati wa agriculture mnaenda shambani pale mnalima. So hata wale ambao hawakuwa wameona shamba makwao wanakwenda shuleni, and you actually get to do that practically. Hiyo ikaondolewa kabisa, and we ended up with the 5 subjects. They're trying to introduce that, which is a good thing.
So the question then is, did we need to have a new curriculum, or maybe we would have fixed those issues with implementation of 844?
Those who say maybe we could have the 360 billion we are spending could have been used maybe to improve 844.
I listen to all the discussion here and elsewhere, but I wonder what the children of Kenya will do, or where they are in this discussion. I mean, I look at it as a situation where Magoha is holding one leg of this Kenyan child, and Sosion is holding the other leg of this Kenyan child, and they're pulling apart. So who has the Kenyan child's interest at heart? Number 1. Number 2, none of them can be wished away. I mean, you can't wish teachers away in this discussion. You can't also wish the government away in this discussion. Why wouldn't they agree if they have the interests of the child at heart? And it's also a question of lack of leadership. I mean, when Amina Mohammed Ambassador was the Minister for Education, and when she said that it's like we are not ready, she was thoroughly demonized. In fact, we are privy to information that she was
publishers.
Yeah, she was even really harassed because State House or the President wanted this curriculum effected immediately, as had been planned. I mean, the publishers were also on her neck, and everybody. So, truth be told, this curriculum, new as it is a big money issue. Big money issue. Let's start there.
And you wanted to?
Yeah, just I mean, all the money issues and all these things aside, I think we also have to agree, in my view, that there are certain problems that we have in this country that probably will not go away today, tomorrow, just whether we have 844 or we have CBC. So if you're talking about congested classrooms, I mean, people who look at the bright side of things will say, well, that means that kids are going to school. I mean,
and it's better that they're all cramped than none of them in school.
Yeah. But and whether and those problems have always been there. People learning under trees and people having all these congested classes, and so probably those are not maybe the real issue. Because if you're talking about problems that have always been there, they're not going to change because you've said the whole system or because you've done a new curriculum. I think what is critical for me is this. Why can these people sit down and agree, okay, fine, we want to do CBC or whatever it is, but the classes are congested, the schools are not there, the classes are not there? Because we have not started having a conversation about the details of this. We are still stuck at all this thing about public participation and everything. And someone would tell you that public participation is a is not an event. So it's not like tomorrow, if Magoha calls all these unions and they sit down. Be good. No. Yeah. Public participation is a long process. And so, and there are parts of it, if, to the best of my knowledge, where NAT actually has been involved. They were there, even Sosion admitted during Hussein's interview on Tuesday that they took part in some of these things. So why don't we just come back to the table and say, where do we go with this education system?
And here's something Dr. Wandia Njoya has been speaking about this issue. Yeah. This is what she said. She says she's against CBC because it distorts society. Parents are now pupils, teachers are family therapists, kids are now workers or slaves, as Nyerere would put it, and the market has become the nation. Here's another interesting thing she says about the CBC that are contradictory, that KICD claims to be preparing kids for jobs of the 21st century, while claiming to want kids to learn. Like I said in 2018, she says, telling students that they learn for jobs ironically makes them not learn. And she's listed quite a number of issues that she says are the problem about the roles and who's doing what, and whether parents are. I mean, you see all these threads of parents going into school for a meeting and they come out and they're completely shocked just about the implementation process, about what their roles will be, about what the roles of the teachers will be. So these are some of those issues. Like you say, okay, infrastructure issues aside, but there's real issues. Here's another one. She says, KICD has put pathways to restrict children, to restrict where children can go. How do you say you want to nurture talent, but at the same time put roadblocks at Form 2?
In fact, I look at it this way. Who do you remember in the introduction of 844 curriculum? Retired President Daniel Arap Moi. So some of these things, the buck stops somewhere, and that somewhere is at the president's table.
And he's been quiet about this, actually.
He is the person who should be calling all these guys, because, I mean, we were told the president is the father of the nation, farmer number one, and everything else. Yeah. So in this case,
symbol of national unity.
All those things used to be, but now in this case, I hope he can recover that aspect of father of the nation and do what? Call all these guys to a round table like this one. You can even probably donate this one and ask each one of them, what are your issues? How do we resolve these issues? Otherwise, we may end up with another 2, 3, 4, 5 months of push and pull, and at the heart of it is the Kenyan child.
That table and the issues will be needed for yet another one, because Jamila is tonight upset.